behind the scenes, it was a small group of people that were doing everything.
Welcome back to the GTM podcast. It's your host, Scott Barker.
I want to know how this insane growth actually happened.
All right, we are back in action. Welcome back to the GTM pod, episode 9 already. So time certainly flies. I'm your host, Scott Barker. We've got some incredible go-to-market execs, founders, and VCs lined up to tell their stories. And as always, my promise to you, the listener, is to work as hard as I can to find out the real stories, the behind-the-scenes stuff, what worked, what didn't, and how things actually went down. And I do want to remind everyone that you can actually get involved as a listener. So you can send your questions to questions@gtmfund.com, and we'll actually answer those live in future episodes. And to date, I think we've been pretty heavy on the go-to-market leader side. Got a lot of credible marketing execs and sales execs that have come on to share their story. But we want to hear founder stories as well. And we got really great feedback on Brian Murray's episode, CEO of Cabal, partner at Kraft. So very excited to welcome another CEO onto the pod. I am joined by May Habib, CEO and founder at Writer. May, welcome to the pod. Thanks for jumping on.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you.
It's gonna be a fun one. And where are you at in the world right now? Are you in London or San Francisco?
I am in London for Thanksgiving week and then got here from New York a couple days ago and then back to SF next week.
Nice. World traveler. Always jumping across the pond. Well, thank you. I know it must be quite late there in London. So hopefully this is the last meeting that you have for the day. But I want to just quickly give a background for all those listeners. So May started her career in banking at Lehman Brothers back in 2007, which was clearly a very interesting time to be on the front lines of that world. Then you went on to work at a sovereign wealth fund and then started your entrepreneurial journey in software localization. You started Writer in 2020. Writer is an AI writing platform that I've watched firsthand absolutely take off like wildfire with truly some of the best marketing teams, some of the best marketers I know swear by it. And we're very happy to be investors out of GTM Fund. And now you have customers like Spotify, HubSpot, Workato, Dialpad, L'Oreal, Accenture, and I know many, many more. And you somehow managed to accomplish all of that with 2 kids and splitting your time between San Francisco and London. How do you manage to stay sane?
Oh, what a good question. I don't know if I am sane. I'm so excited by everything happening. I'm like that horrible partner where like you sit down to like watch something on a Sunday night and I'm like, can we just listen to our gong calls? Because it is so much more exciting than what is on HBO. I swear, don't laugh. And my husband's like, how are you listening to this shit at 2.5x? Like I can't. And I can't listen to it at 1x because it's going too slow. But yeah, it is like a really exciting phase in the company. I mean, it literally is more exciting than HBO. So that probably says it all.
That does say it all. HBO's got some good stuff these days. So no House of Dragon for you, no White Lotus. It is gong calls all day, every day. I think that does make you certifiably insane, but the best kind of insane. That's cool. Okay, so before we kind of get to the story element of this podcast, I do want to dive into your time at Lehman Brothers because I think it's a unique vantage point that you have, and maybe talk through some of the similarities and differences to this current implosion, I guess we can call it, that we find ourselves in. So How does this feel similar to '07, '08, and how does it feel different?
Yeah, great questions. It was a really fascinating year and a half, '07, '08, at Lehman. And I was definitely feeling like the world was ending. I mean, like, it's not even comparable what's happening now to what happened then, where we literally thought like our money wasn't going to be safe. Like, right now, it feels like, no, rich people aren't getting as rich as they were getting last year, like '08, '09 hit Main Street, hit it hard. And, like my own parents lost their house. I've never shared that. It was like a really, really profound crisis. I watched basically all of us like leave Midtown with our lives in a box. People who had and I watched MDs 20, 30 years at Lehman put all of their trophies that they had sacrificed watching their kids grow up for into boxes and like walk out that building along with the interns. Like it's not even comparable. And um, I then actually, you know, I am a lover of pain. I went to work in Abu Dhabi for the Sovereign Wealth Fund and then also watched the Dubai meltdown in '09 firsthand. So, those were like real profound crises. And I imagine like folks who lived through the 2000 web crash felt similarly. Like the internet, if people felt like the internet wasn't going to recover, right? Or like that sector, this is about multiples. And so, I feel like, having lived through that, definitely gives me a lot of context for what is happening and just the patience to like wait out what in my opinion are not fundamental problems with the economy that have to get worked out. It is money oversupply working its way, and the fixes for that working their way through the system. So, it's about timing. Thankfully, we don't have to raise next year. I definitely feel for anyone who does have to access capital markets in 23. But if you do, if that's you, I mean, interim valuations really don't matter. Protect your team and just capitalize the business however it gets done to keep going. So, that's the context for me. And sure, maybe multiples never go back to 21, like public SaaS multiples that we all live on in our industry, but um, they're not gonna stay at single digits, that's for sure. Like these companies grow too fast and spin off way too much cash relative to the rest of the economy for the multiples to stay where they are. So yeah, it was definitely a really, really tough time. And like I know 23 is going to be way worse than this year. But even that is not going to be anywhere close to what '08, '09 was for those of us in the financial industry then.
Well, thank you for sharing some of that personal side, and I think it's a healthy and a refreshing perspective because there is a lot of doom and gloom out there, to put it lightly. Um, I guess my question, just a quick follow up question, is if you were in the position. So there's a lot of founders that listen to this. If you were in a position where you did have to access capital in 23, what are some of the things that you would look at?
You definitely want to raise as little as possible. You want to use it as an opportunity to make sure your team is being as efficient as possible. Um, and I would look at, the top decile, okay, maybe not that far, top quartile efficiency metrics from payback period to growth rates to sales and marketing spend for like wherever you are. Below 10 mil, they don't, most of the like indices or like the firms that publish this, DM me if you have no idea what I'm talking about, and like I will give you examples. But a lot of the large firms will aggregate everything that's going on in their portfolio and data points they have on the rest of the market and publish like breakouts by percentile across all sorts of metrics. So it gets like relatively straightforward to benchmark yourself really granularly. And use it as a crisis opportunity, right? Like don't miss the opportunity to take advantage of the chaos to make your business more efficient, more resilient. I love that we are scaling actually in this macro because everything from really positioning above the line to how we access power to how early we multi-thread to just like how granular and focused we are on getting deals done. Like it definitely feels like things that I don't think we would have been thinking about till the B and maybe even the C, like given how I know companies were being run in the run up to 2020 and 21, just from like talking to friends, founder friends. So I actually think this is all like really much needed, like basic business 101 that a lot of people are learning for the first time. That like a lot of the businesses I looked at when I worked at the sovereign wealth fund or at the bank, like knew cold, right? Like how to run an efficient business, how to grow efficiently. So I would look at that, plus how much money you like actually need once you get there. And then find the best partners and get it done at whatever price is required to get it done. Like don't attach ego to up rounds. These are all interim valuations. If you're growing something to exit and like really exit, what happened when you raised in 23, first half of 23, it'll be a blip.
Mhm. Incredible advice. And I like the idea of take advantage of the chaos to build better habits, to build better business fundamentals. Um, so we will get back to some of the things you mentioned there that you've been doing over the course of the last little bit that have been those habits that maybe wouldn't have come until later on in your journey. And I do want to spend a good amount of time talking about this idea of PLG scaling. But before we get there, I know AI is a big part of what Writer does, and as a investor, it certainly feels like AI is having an unprecedented moment right now. The velocity at which artificial intelligence is developing seems to be surprising a lot of people. Something I personally find extremely interesting is that when people used to discuss AI, there was always this shared sentiment that it wouldn't touch human creativity and that creativity would sort of be this maybe last bastion that humans would hang their hat on. But with a lot of the work done by OpenAI and the development of Dolly and GPT-3, it seems like creative work almost seems to be one of the first true broad use cases for AI, which is interesting. And a lot of our listeners, again, GTM leaders, VCs, founders, how much attention should the average business leader be thinking about AI? And second question, how much of an impact is it going to have on the near impact of our work?
Yeah, really good questions. If I were an enterprise exec, like VP and above at a company of scale, like let's say like 3 or 4 thousand employees and above, this is all I would be thinking about is how do I use the like real breakthroughs in the reasoning capabilities and like I call it reasoning mimicry to like not confuse people who don't like really know what's under the hood. But like that is good enough to help people make decisions. Like how will I incorporate that into my business? And it goes like way beyond copywriting. Like Scott, we can bleep things out. So I'm going to use like names and then we can talk about that. But we're doing this massive thing with United Healthcare, which has been a customer. They renewed 2 months ago, so it's been 14 months. And you start with using AI to edit content, and then you use AI to write headers and subheads. then you are more comfortable and you use AI to maybe give you first draft of pre-diabetes information that you were like previously drafting from scratch. And now you're using AI to actually suggest to thousands of clinicians, right, like what the language should be as they recommend or reject people for insurance coverage. Right. And so, like, the real progress, I mean, like, Da Vinci is virtually unchanged since like 1920. And there are like some endpoints that like got an upgrade and made it easier to build apps of, but like, the out of the box templates that you see in the vast majority of the folks who have built on top of GPT-3, like those templates OpenAI built and released in 2019. Like what has actually happened and why I think the excitement is justified over the past year is like some really exciting shit has happened in mid-market and enterprise that people are hearing about that gets people very excited. Um, Adore Me just sent us a incredible video screen share of how they incorporated the writer's APIs into the back end of the system that produces all of the copy for like every single SKU, every single ad, right? And like that's what takes time. Like it has been a year and a bit that we've been working with them. They started with the style guide, they started with the writing assistant, right? They started generating some things, they started fine tuning their own models, right? And like pretty soon, a quarter of that business somehow uses AI every single day in their business. So, the marketing, the copywriting, like that is very surface level, actually. Like we start there, there's a wedge. But then the goal and what actually happens is AI reasoning is getting into like every single function where that reasoning is presented as text. So that is different than right copywriting or copy editing and marketing. It is really much deeper. So it is exciting. I think like the hype factor is there also. And so now I am noticing people getting we literally get like half a dozen to a dozen inbound every couple of days. And like people starting to see and like understand the difference between having like you owning your own stack and like calling out or building on top of the OpenAI APIs. And so, it's definitely exciting to have been here all along, right? Like just working away, chipping away. The real work is still those execs you talked about, right? Like who is really thinking about this? Who has got the wherewithal to like get other people to think about this, to make room for this? And I'll give you an example. We had a customer, this was like maybe 6-7 months ago, get started. They're very excited. This is Adore Me. We'll have to like bleep all of this out. But and maybe 6 weeks in, they're very excited. They fired a copywriter. Well, guess what? And they fired them for like reasons completely unrelated to writer. The other people totally freaked the shit out. And so now they didn't want to touch writer, right? And like they were afraid that like it was someone bringing writer in to like over time reduce the writing capacity on the team. And like that is absolutely not true. Like they now have multiple recs out because the business is doing better. It literally just got sold, right? And like AI was a big reason it did. And so that is what still needs to be worked out, and there's a reason that like new technologies sort of like really only chug along until they're everywhere. It's because it just takes time to make room for new processes and for people to like understand that their jobs like will change a little bit in terms of like the end result that they're trying to do, like their goals. The way that they get that done will change a lot. um, and like we still see it. There are people who will see an ROI calculator that one of our reps puts in front of them. And they're like, yeah, 3 million bucks saved. I totally understand. And then there are other people who like I've seen crazy shit like, these numbers in the millions. I don't think it's that much, but yes, it's freaking amazing. And like there is still, even in companies that are getting a huge amount of value, like some of the like folks who are a little bit scared of the technology, right? Like talking about sort of underselling the real value, but it's ginormous. It's enormous. Like if you don't get on top of this and your competitors do, like whatever industry you're in, you are gonna get smoked. And I think this is why we're so obsessed with our customers right now. And like literally dozens of us are talking to dozens of them every day because the ones who get it really get it. And like the ways they're using the product and pushing us is it's just an explosion of innovation internally as a result. But yeah, it is going to be a world of haves and have nots. And what we're doing now is really learning and creating process around like what turns somebody into um, an AI whisperer, right? Like a real kind of like at UiPath, they call them citizen developers. And I love that. UiPath is a fantastic customer, and they coined that term. Now, this is not like retool. People aren't using Writer to build apps, but in a lot of ways, they are language apps because what's underneath the hood and what's really powerful internally is being able to build like really custom outputs as a result of deep understanding of what you need the content to do or what content you need to analyze to get what kind of output or reason or decision. Um, so yeah, it's really exciting. And I think 23, I forget when newspaper just asked me about this. And, about like what's going to happen in AI in 23. And I said two things. I think one, a lot of the ethical and IP issues with using some of these models is really going to come to the mainstream. And a group of engineers have already sued Microsoft and GitHub around Copilot. And like we at Writer have already filled out 2 AI ethics questionnaires from customers that have closed. And it like used to be infosec, data, privacy, and now I think it's also going to be AI. What the fuck is in your model? Like, what is the data? What licenses do you have for it? Like, what are we signing up for if we use that in our business? So I think that's number one. And then I think number two, like we're just going to see a lot more roles really dedicated to being able to adopt and grow and implement tools like Writer in the enterprise. So yeah, exciting times ahead.
It certainly is. And it sounds like, step one, if you're not on kind of the AI train yet, is, getting rid of the fear and just getting your feet wet, like starting with the smaller use cases. And it sounds like kind of what you're describing is not unlike any new technology that comes out, right? Like you look at a decade ago, and if you were adopting marketing automation before your other competitors were, or you were early sales engagement before your other competitors were, or you were early to some of these things, then you had just an incredible execution advantage, like unprecedented. And then you could sometimes gain so much traction so quickly that they can never catch up. And I think the capabilities of AI, because they touch every use case in the business, will just make that gap even wider than some of the other technology categories that have had such a big impact on, how we grow and scale businesses. Um, super exciting times. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit and go into kind of story time. And we talked about a few of these use cases, but I want to dive into your PLG motion. And there's kind of self-serve model, there's sales assisted, and I talk to a lot of companies that are realizing the power of PLG. They're trying to either build a company from the ground up using PLG, or they're trying to infuse it into their go to market motion somehow. But it seems like many are having a hard time bridging this gap to larger enterprise deals. And that's something that Writer has done extremely well. Um, can you share a story of maybe a recent win that started as a small download and then turned into a big enterprise account and how that all went down.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you we can walk through two examples that are actually like very different businesses. HubSpot, which is a SaaS B2B SaaS business, and Charles Schwab, which is like a very storied financial institution, post digital transformation, really critically. Both about 100K ACVs, and both started out um, with trials that turned into, I think, in one case, like one paid seat, and in the other case, two paid seats. And the conversation with sales, because obviously these are like both core bullseye ICP for us. So, when those people start trials, actually at like any level, they're on our radar, and they get assigned. When they are started by directors, as both of these were, then people are reaching out, right, based on product activity. And so the conversation started with sales started early, but it was probably like 2 to 3 months of both of those companies. So this is like Q2, and then they both got closed in Q3. This is like really almost a quarter of like them essentially getting value and doing research. And I joke with James Lee, who's brilliant, that like, a sign up, even when they're active, is like the new white paper. Like I literally sign up to tools like I used to download white papers that I never read. I like sign up to trials that I never fucking log into. And so like we should treat them as such. This is just like another touch. And I was talking to the CMO of TalkDesk. Gosh, she's amazing. They're not a customer yet, but hopefully soon. And she told me that they recently signed a healthcare deal. I was telling her about our healthcare customers, where they had about 30 people in the buying committee and 534 pieces of content that those 30 people engaged with deeply, right? Now, what Writer enables is a team of 10 to be able to do what like a team of 50 did over a decade. Um, but like the takeaway point is like your product is actually just another touch point now, and that's how you got to think about it. In terms of how we've used PLG, we just hired our 8th sales rep. We do no outbound. We have no SDRs. And they all have got plenty of pipeline. And it is because like the product is able to activate, and a big chunk, the folks who are of our sales assist ICP are in there and activating because they want to solve a deeper, bigger problem. They're not just there to like activate on their own. And so the deep understanding of your market has to be like, who is better off putting in their credit card and being self-service, and who is better served like getting a sales assist process where we get to talk to them about like what it means and what problems you're now able to solve if you actually think about implementing the product at a deeper, wider level. And I don't even mean org wide. Like we tend to do the multi-team after the initial land. And so like that's great because like, if you're already landing 6 figures, like these can get very, very big. But the first goal is like the long pole in the tent is to solve a deep problem for one team, and do that really effectively. That earns you the right to like engage in the strategic way. And so, for us, like PLG, and this being completely inbound and product driven inbound, not content driven inbound, was like table stakes because like it's so magical that you have to be able to experience it yourself. Like I love the Lattice go to market, but like that could never have been us. You sort of know what you're signing up for if you're buying performance management software, and like, you trust that it is as beautiful as it looks like in the marketing. But like that could never have been Writer. Like we are literally at your fingertips correcting and improving and generating what you're saying and writing. Like I got to see it to believe it. And the features around getting people to activation and adoption, now that's what we're segmenting. Like, a director from HubSpot shows up. I'm not going to ask them to like upload, 100 terms in their terminology bank as step 2. Because like that person's not going to fucking do it. The person who's going to do it is like 2 steps down from them, that person. Like that person is clearly there to learn about the product. And so the tour is going to go differently. Right. And the way that we still want them to get to value, right? We still want them to have hands-on keyboard knowledge of what the product can do for them and for them to like really not want it ripped from their hands. But it's going to be a different, the product serves a different role.
It's so interesting. And the beautiful thing that I love about this motion is it does really bring back true consultative sales. Like your AEs, when they're in a meeting, like, they're there not to just demo a product, they're there to teach and enhance the experience. And I guess my question was, do they always know their deeper, bigger problem that they're trying to solve? Or are a lot of times your AEs kind of shining a light on having them think bigger?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, when when senior managers and directors come in, like we are still in very much like early adopter world in this land, and it's all inbound, right? So they've already done the research, they already read the website, they know the competitors, they've tried them, they follow us on social. Um, they are really well tuned to what the company's trying to get done next year, what their boss cares about, what their boss's boss cares about, like what the CMO is going to be measured and valued on. Folks really understand it, and I think that has been a big learning. And we've actually we've narrowed our messaging a lot. So like this time last year and up until really 6 weeks ago, not even. Um, our messaging was very much come one, come all, great writing for everyone. And that is still our vision. That is still our mission, is like literally billions of people using writer and being able to communicate their thoughts into beautiful, perfect prose. But the homepage right now actually speaks directly to marketers. And, rather than marketers being one way you can use Writer, it is literally like a homepage experience built entirely for where we want to be landing strategically. And that's the result of learning about like, when we land in marketing, it's 160% NRR, right? And like it's 140 NRR overall because there's so much growth. We haven't lost a customer since last November. This is like a product that really grows and expands once we're in. But landing in marketing gives us like that better shot of like really being able to serve the entire user journey. I was on the phone with 7,000 person company today, and this is the VP of design of, well, I guess we can bleep it out, of Assurian. Freaking amazing guy. And at that company, he's the person in charge of making sure it's a consistent user journey across the entire funnel, right? And like that's the beauty of like really talking to the problem, no matter like who it is that is like what team they sit on. Like, even if it is social proof from marketers on your site, like they can see what results they're getting, right? And they're like, oh, that's what I want to sign up for. And so, it is a maturation, I think. And the team is incredible. And like, it took them a while to like talk me into, look, we can still be for L&D teams, and they can still use us on documentation, and they can still use us in all these other places they're using us, but it'll be a journey, and they'll discover that post our initial land. And so, yeah, I've definitely seen the light, and we've always had great conversion rates, but it's definitely been a huge improvement being able to narrow in. So, PLG is complicated. Like it is not a it's simple in that like you make the decision that it's table stakes and then you just fucking deliver. But like the way that it impacts everything else you do, you want to be really intentional about who it's for, who should be self-serving, right? and who should be sales assist. And it's both product led, because without the product and people, your prospects being in the product, you literally have no conversation and you have no credit card. So it is it's table stakes.
It feels like it undoubtedly is the future. And, this question is more of like a thought experiment, because as you were talking, we've always segmented our sales teams, pretty similarly. You'd have like a SMB, you have mid-market, and then you have account executives. It seems like in this motion, there might be a world where we start segmenting our account executives based on the different almost use cases, right? You have marketing, so maybe you have an AE that is really good at selling that initial like land, and then you have an expert in the L&D use case and the documentation use case. Have you thought about that? Is that something that you've toyed around with at all? Because it is a fundamental shift, and it would be completely new and blow up some of the old playbooks, but it seems to, at least intellectually, make sense.
Yeah, totally. I think like as we think about, the layers of the onion and sort of like really expanding out, the SAM within the TAM, it's sort of like, when you look at a map and you are here. So, the team really understands like how it is that we are going to be scaling, and what we're doing now and like how that ties into everything else, which is important because you want to be able to give the team the autonomy to ignore shit, and without needing to like feel like they need to come back to anybody. We have a very autonomous team, so it's important for folks to know like strategically where it is that you are. But the TLDR is absolutely, that is what we want to be doing, and that would be paired with, of course, sales enablement and then the marketing and the go to market to support that. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Super cool. And trying to be cautious of time, because I could probably peel back this onion, as you said, for hours with you. But being cautious of time, I want to go to a listener question. And this is directly from a sales leader. It's a great question. How have you gone about recruiting A players in this macro environment? There seems to be an influx of talent due to layoffs, but I can't help but feel like some of them might be B players. What is your view on that?
Hmm. I think a lot of these cuts have gone very deep, and some of them have been last in, first out. And so I don't know that it would be entirely fair to agree with that. Um, we've recruited the, the vast majority of our team outbound, from sales reps to leaders to CSMs. It has been very intentional, and I color code my calendar like every insane OCD person. And we probably spent 8-9 hours a day interviewing for the vast majority of the last year, on top of like your normal workload, like me and a couple other folks on the team. And so it is a lot of interviews to find the one for any individual role. And we are comfortable with a high degree of pain leaving a position open. Like there are a couple roles that are still open that are like very uncomfortable that they are open, but we are making do. If you know any incredible product designers, we're also looking for a head of content and community, two positions that have been open in a comfortably long time. But because we are still waiting for really the right folks to fill those positions, and we've been opportunistically chatting with folks that we meet for a VP of CS role. So those are like the three kind of big roles still to go on the team. And like, trust me, we are like scouring every layoff list. But we haven't had any conversations from those lists. We definitely are very specific. We do something called a 1 month, 1 quarter, 1 year, in addition to a job like the JD, and basically like what is this person going to have done in their first month, their first quarter, and their first year. And then we will interview like a few folks as a team for calibration, and then like really zero in on what we want, and then we'll do kind of bulk interviews, and then we've got our on-site that comes out of that. So it's a lot of work recruiting a top team. I am really proud of everybody on the team, and these are really dedicated, high grit people. And like hiring in the last quarter of last year, like Q4 last year and Q1 was incredibly competitive. And now it's incredibly competitive too, but for like very different reasons. I think like the ability to join a company that's got real 10x upside, like not like a lot of crazy things need to happen for my equity to be worth 10 times what it's worth now. Like hiring those people into Series A, Q4, Q1 versus like Series B to D or like C to E, where 10x in 2 years absolutely could have happened, right? In that nutso environment. Like we were able to actually have a viewpoint on that made it really exciting for people to join us versus take later stage opportunities where there was like conceivably less risk. I think now, like there's still the okay, why would I join a Series A company versus a later stage, more mature company? But like if you are an experienced early stage operator and you really are looking for that home run financially, like you're only going to get it at the early stage where you've got like fairly high confidence that the company is certainly the 10x number. The company is going to get to a significant scale. So, I think like the mission, the product, the customers, the team, like all of that has to be absolutely winning and stellar. And, people are like voting their families' futures, right? And like joining your company. And so, them really understanding the upside's important. And I was talking to a candidate earlier this week, and, they would be new to tech actually. And they said, how do I know that my equity would be worth anything? Um, and I said, it's a great question. You're absolutely right. It could be worth nothing. What I would be thinking about is who is shoulder to shoulder to me in this company, trying to make the equity worth something. And do I really deeply respect and trust those people? And, some really incredible, talented people have made that decision with me and my co-founder. We're so lucky and grateful for that. And like those are the people that determine what the equity is worth. So yeah, to the person, looking at the lists, like some people just didn't join a company at the right time. And I would definitely, we do look at those lists. There's some great people there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've learned layoffs happen for all sorts of different reasons for sure. It can be timing, can be politics, can be everything. So I would keep an open mind, and I love that answer. And it truly is all about the people that are beside you. Look left, look right. If those people are willing to go to battle with you, then there's a very good chance your equity will reflect that. Um, and just reiterating, if there is any VPs of CS listening to this, go chat to May. And I actually might have a head of community candidate. Someone pinged me yesterday, so we'll take that offline. But all right, last question, May. This has been such an awesome conversation, as I knew it would be. I keep this one intentionally vague, always do, so you can take it whichever way you want. But in a few sentences, how would you summarize some of your career learnings? You can either underscore some of the things we already talked about, or really just highlight anything that you want to leave our listeners with.
I used to think early in my career that like, there would be months I was like in work mode, heads down mode, and months that I would be in like learning mode or open mode. And being in finance and then private equity, like those are much slower moving industries. And I think that the big learning for me in tech is to just consistently, constantly be in learning mode, because it absolutely doesn't get easier. It only gets harder. There's only ever more at stake. There are only ever more variables. There's only ever more dynamism. And the thing that needs to change is that you get better, and you being like both yourself and the team. So like never letting, it's always resetting that learning curve, and like surrounding yourself with people who are just completely self-motivated to consistently be resetting their own learning curve. I think that's been the biggest career learning that I think has defined, the pace and trajectory that we've been able to be on. And it's not an easy thing, and it's like all sorts of micro habits that put you in learning mode. But yeah, I think that is the biggest one for me. And then, like related to that, I am always thinking out loud with the people that I am talking to. Like, what are the things that are on top of my mind become the things that I am like talking about. And like, we don't build in public. Like, that's not really my personality. But like, it's like semi-public, right? Like, I don't have to have known you that well to talk to you about the things that like we are working through, and like hear your opinion about it, and how do you do it in your company, and what have you seen before work really well. And so, that is me kind of always being in learning mode.
Well, that's a great place to wrap up. Always be in learning mode, think out loud, lean on peers. There's, tech community is small. We're all here to, have an impact on the evolution of business and technology. And it's an exciting time for all of us. Macro things aside, and you said the word dynamism. That's actually my favorite word, I think, in the English language is dynamism. Well, May, thank you again. I always enjoy chatting with you. I appreciate you bringing the energy, even though it's late in the evening for you on your side of the pond. I really appreciate it. And to all those listeners, listening is one thing, executing is everything. Get out there, learn and grow your business and your impact. And we will see you all next week.